Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Rocha, a master's student at California State University of Northridge. And today I will be discussing traumatic brain injury, TBI, and hemiparesis, and how the two impact a person's ability to navigate various environments and how that in turn impacts their quality of life. So to do that, I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I will be sharing with you all. Alrighty. This one. Alrighty. So I have titled this presentation Understanding Traumatic Brain Injury, TBI, Hemiparesis, and How Mobility Impacts Their Quality of Life. So, to get a full understanding of traumatic brain injury, TBI occurs either by a fall, it occurs during a motor vehicle accident, a violent act of crime on an individual. It could be bleeding in the brain, a brain tumor. There are various reasons that a person can experience brain damage. And when a person has this type of damage, it is classified as a traumatic brain injury. What this does is it impacts in a negative way how a person functions, lives, how the person speaks, how they are able to move around. It definitely can be devastating for many individuals, and TBI is most definitely, in virtually all cases, life changing for the individual as well as for the support team of an individual. The most common TBI causes, as I mentioned earlier, could be a violent act of crime. Just to give an example of an act of crime that would result in a TBI, or that could possibly result in a TBI, would be a gunshot wound to the head. Motor vehicle accident is common. However, the one of the most frequent causes of a TBI is falls, and a fall can happen at any age. It can happen, as a child, as a youth. It could happen, if you're walking outside your home and you trip on a step. So TBI is very common nowadays. According to the CDC, there were over 64,000 TBI-related deaths in 2020. That amounts to about 176 TBI deaths per day. So we need to spread awareness, and that is my intention today with this presentation and this video. So some of the common disabilities that come as a result of TBI would be hemiparesis. Hemiparesis is when an individual experiences neglect on one side of their body. And this is literal. What I mean by that is they literally shut down, and this is because of the brain damage. That signal is lost. That signal from the brain to the body that says move. So that muscle movement is literally shut off with hemiparesis. And it causes the individual to form neglect of one side and eventually leads to hemiplegia. Hemiplegia is a form of paralysis as a result of that one-sided neglect. So as an example, if an individual experiences brain damage to their right hemisphere in their brain, they will have left side hemiparesis, or more than likely, as a result of the brain damage, result in left side hemiparesis. So, some examples, some symptoms that are visual of hemiparesis would be tightness in the hand, tightness in the arm, tightness in the leg and the foot. And this tightness is usually caused by spasticity, which is increased muscle tone. So it's causing, due to the neglect, it's causing the individual's muscles to overact, creating that extra muscle tone, which in turn create the stiffness. And once a person is stiff, they no longer have the ability to move, to stretch that part of their body, that limb. And so it turns into paralysis. Another common symptom is peripheral vision loss. And I'm highlighting these two particular disabilities because this presentation is specifically on TBI and mobility, and how that particular disability impacts how a person navigates various environments after having a TBI. So peripheral vision loss is the person literally is only able to see what is directly in front of them. So it is a loss of their peripheral vision. So the best way to describe it would be tunnel vision. So if you put your fingers in a circle right above your eyes and you look, all you can see is what's directly in front of you and directly in the center. And the world to your left and to your right does not exist. This is what it looks like for individuals who experience peripheral vision loss. In addition, with peripheral vision loss, there are other complications and challenges that an individual may experience, such as visual spatial neglect. And that is literally an individual being off on their depth perception. And I'm bringing these up because these definitely have an impact on how a person will move around following a TBI, whether it be by foot, if the individual still has the ability to walk, or by another means of mobility, such as a wheelchair. And then I've also listed some other TBI symptoms, which would be impulsivity, memory loss, a decline in cognition. So we've already kind of briefly discussed hemiparesis, hemiplegia, and peripheral vision loss. And again, I'm highlighting on these three because they really do have a huge impact on how an assistive technology professional is going to make a recommendation for an individual's means of mobility following a TBI. So again, with a traumatic brain injury, the individual experiences brain damage, which can have an impact on a person's overall bodily functioning and muscle functioning. This includes how a person eats, whether or not a person is able to speak again, whether or not a person is able to maintain body posture, balance, motor coordination. So, following a traumatic brain injury, most of the time, an individual will begin what is called TBI recovery, and this usually occurs in an inpatient setting. It will consist of neurorehabilitation, comprehensive therapy, and it could begin in inpatient services in a hospital setting and continue on into outpatient services where the individual is in their home setting, they reintegrated into a community setting, and now attend outpatient on maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So neurorehabilitation consists of retraining the brain through comprehensive therapy, for example, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, there's vision therapy, music therapy, counseling services, and an aggressive approach to each one of these therapeutic activities is what makes up neurorehabilitation. Because the goal here in TBI recovery is to retrain the brain for the lost signals due to brain damage. And when I say signals, our brain literally signals, it signals our body to act upon what is being observed and what is being absorbed into the brain. And it is unfortunate, but the case is that with brain damage, there are signals that will be lost. And so the goal of neurorehabilitation is to increase neuroplasticity, and that's create new neural pathways. So with a TBI and assistive technology, the assistive technology professional's goal is to assess and evaluate an individual based on their goals and their needs for how they want to function in life following a TBI. So in assessments and evaluations, there is information that is brought up and learned by the individual and about the individual and their environment. And this information that is gathered and observed is crucial to helping out and assisting that individual successfully recover and regain some level of independence in their life following a TBI. So there is durable medical equipment, and just a quick example of that would be a shower chair. Some individuals are not able to stand following a TBI. The result of that could be due to spasticity. They have a foot drop and the foot will just no longer stay flat on the ground. So they will require assistance from a caregiver with hygiene, activities of daily living. So a good example of durable medical equipment could be a wheelchair, a transfer bench, a shower chair, adaptive equipment as well. We also can recommend an ankle foot orthosis. Usually requires the involvement of a treatment team. So we're talking here general practitioner. Treatment team can consist of a neurologist, the physical therapist, a physical medicine and rehab doctor, PM&R, for spasticity management. So those are just some ideas that are forms of assistive technology, which are pretty much any piece of equipment, device, software, or item. It could be low complex to super high tech that will assist an individual in improving their level of functioning in life following a TBI. Another imperative item here is that regardless of what is being recommended, it is very important that the individual and their support system, caregivers, treatment team, family members, friends, neighbors, whoever's involved in assisting that individual who lives with TBI in their recovery, that they receive education, the resources they need, and training for AT use. That is very important to prevent AT abandonment. And there are local centers such as the Centers for Independent Living, the Department of Rehabilitation. I am local in the state of California, so I'm familiar with Center for Independent Living, as well as California Department of Rehabilitation and the Disability Resource Center locally here in California. And those are resources that can be suggested, and we can refer these individuals who live with a TBI to obtain information such as how to fund, how to receive a grant for AT, because there are limitations and barriers to obtaining AT. Not all AT is considered a medical necessity, and so therefore individuals may run into a challenge obtaining the AT due to funding. So they may not have the means to fund a particular item. They may not have access due to their location. They may live in a rural area where obtaining a piece of equipment would be an hour or two or even further out from them. And there are, again, resources, and as AT professionals, we would want to educate and maintain our knowledge in this particular area so that we're able to provide those resources to individuals. In addition, there may be a lack of communication amongst individual caregiver and their treatment team. And what I mean by that is, for example, an AT professional may make a recommendation for an individual to use a power wheelchair, for example. And that may come from, let's say, a physical therapist. The physical strength may be there for an individual with a TBI, but we need to consider other challenges that this individual may be facing. For example, their peripheral vision loss. Now, with peripheral vision loss, if we were to put an individual with a TBI on a power wheelchair, we would want to make sure that that person has full ability to view what is to the side of them and what is to the right of them. Otherwise, we could potentially put that individual at a safety risk operating a power wheelchair or some sort of a power device. So lack of communication is another barrier that we see to obtaining AT. It's either the wrong recommendation, the individual has no interest in trying out that AT, so it will lead to abandonment, or the individual requires assistance in utilizing that piece of equipment or software or device, and that the caregiver has no knowledge or is not educated on how to assist the individual with that particular piece of equipment. Lastly, to conclude, I do want to highlight that the ADA was put in place, of course, to prevent discrimination. And so it is very important that as AT professionals, we advocate and we be the voice and we empower those individuals living with TBI and common disabilities. We empower them to utilize their resources because they do have equal rights and access to the same public services and the same resources that any other individual has. So we want to make sure that we are enforcing and that we are acting upon and doing our due diligence to educating and speaking on behalf of individuals who are in need of some form of assistive technology. I also want to highlight the Rehabilitation Act, and the reason why I highlight this act is due to this act was put in place so that there are grants that are made available to individuals who may not have the funding for specific products that are not covered by insurance or state-funded Medicaid. There are grants in place, and this is due to the Rehabilitation Act. And the same thing goes for Fair Housing Act. Individuals have the right to live in various communities in they are not to be discriminated upon, and they do have the right to access the building if they are living in a a multiple dwelling, such as an apartment complex, duplexes, or other common areas, they are not to be discriminated upon, nor are they to be turned away due to their disability or their medical necessity. So I would like to conclude with that, and I appreciate your time in hearing out my presentation and hope you all have a wonderful week. And thank you again for listening. Take care.